Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing how I made this sweet baby card using a whole bunch of Lawn Fawn supplies, including a lot of their stamps as well as some dies. I made this card for a friend who recently had a baby and I personalized it with the baby's name, which I think is a really special touch on baby cards. So without further ado, let's get into the card making. I'm starting by making the background, and for this I'm using one of a newer Lawn Fawn die. This is new to me. I think Lawn Fawn released it back in summer of 2021, so this is now winter that I'm using it, and I finally grabbed it. It is the Diagonal Stripes Backdrop die. For the exact name of this die, as well as any other supplies that I'm using in this video, because I may be misnaming them as I speak, please do check down in the video description below. That will list all of the supplies, their exact names, in case you wanted to use the same things on your cards. So with this diagonal backdrop die, basically it cuts a panel that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is the size of a standard A2 size card with a really nice stitching detail around the edge. And then it cuts these diagonal stripes down from sort of the top right corner down to the bottom left in the way that I have it arranged here. And that way you get these really nice equally spaced stripes, which you can sort of alternate colors and create really nice patterns. So I cut that twice using one piece of white cardstock and one piece of light blue cardstock. And then I cut a piece of white cardstock to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 just using my paper trimmer, and I'm using that as a backdrop. And I'm just gluing each piece one by one using some liquid glue onto that backdrop, and as I go down I'm alternating white and blue. And the cool thing is that if you cut this out of two pieces of different colors, you can get two different backdrops because you've essentially cut two whole pieces worth of diagonal stripes. So I did that and I got two backdrops, although I will only be using one on this card. Moving on, I'm stamping out the sentiment, and for this I've cut a piece of vellum using a simple wavy banner die. This is also from Lawn Fawn, and it cuts that really sweet sort of wavy banner shape with a really cute little banner flag ends. It's hard to see because it's vellum, which is pretty much see-through, but I do have it down there in my mini MISTI, and I've sort of bolted it down with those two magnets at the ends, and I'm just using an alphabet die set to spell out the words "Welcome to the Jungle," which I thought was a really sweet sort of welcome baby sentiment that will go with the jungle theme of this card. So I'm just sort of arranging those letters so that they fit on the banner in my mini MISTI and just testing to make sure it all looks good, and then I can stamp them with Versamark ink, or ink them up with Versamark ink, which is a sticky ink for embossing, and I'm going to be doing white embossing with these letters. So I'm just getting those letters nice and wet with that Versamark ink and then using my MISTI tool to stamp them down and just lightly pressing, because Versamark is very sticky, so you don't need to press too hard on this whenever you're doing this. But once I've got those nice and stamped, you can see that those letters are showing up on that banner. Well, it is hard to see, but you'll see in a moment when I put that white embossing powder onto the letters, it'll stick nicely and spell out those words. And I'm just doing this over a coffee filter so that I can drain the excess embossing powder back into the little bottle. I'm now just using my little craft pick tool to sort of pick away any stray pieces of embossing powder that may have stuck to the banner. Off camera, I can heat set that, and then you get this beautiful sentiment that is white heat embossed on vellum, which is really pretty. Okay, I've gone ahead and assembled some of the other pieces that will go into this card. So I'm starting with my A2 card base, just made out of white cardstock. And then I have this backdrop here that you saw me make earlier with the alternating white and blue stripes, which I just thought was a really nice theme for a baby boy card, although I know that colors really don't have to be specific to one gender or another. So I'm just gluing that straight down onto my card base, and the other pieces that I've assembled you can start to see here on the left are a grassy border that I cut out of some Lawn Fawn pattern paper. This is their Spiffy Speckles pattern paper, and I took a green piece and cut this sort of tropical grass border. Check down in the description below again for the exact name of the die used for that, but it was one of their tropical supplies that they released as part of a summer release in 2021, along with a tropical themed stamp set that I will also be using for this card. I also cut out a stitch square in the blue color of their Spiffy Speckles pattern paper. I really like this pattern paper because it just has this really subtle sort of speckled look on it, which is really pretty. It's hard to capture in the photos, but it's really pretty in real life. Off to the side, I also had pre-cut, colored, and stamped some images from one of Lawn Fawn's stamp sets that, like I mentioned, they released as part of their 2021 summer release. That's the Toucan Do It stamp set, and it has a lot of really cute jungle-themed critters and images. So I'd already stamped and colored some of the images from that, and I'm going to be using them on this card, and I've already glued that leopard down onto the square panel. I glued the whole square panel onto a piece of shimmery gold cardstock that I cut out using a scalloped square die, and that piece is now sort of ready to assemble onto the card. I knew I wanted that scalloped piece to be on top of a couple leaves that were sort of poking up from behind. So I'm sort of just testing where I want the square to be, and then I can just assemble the leaves, sort of arrange them in the corners, and stick them down with some liquid glue. So you can see me kind of going back and forth, putting the leaf, then putting the square, making sure I like the placement, and then I can glue down the leaves. I'm going to put a couple in the top right corner and then a couple in the bottom left corner, sticking up from behind that panel. I just wanted to mention also that this gold cardstock that I used for the scalloped square, that's also by Lawn Fawn. I believe it's called Gold Rush. It's not really gold per se, it's more of like a tanny yellow colored cardstock, but it has these beautiful gold flecks in it. Again, it's one of those things that's really hard to show up on camera, but it is beautiful in real life. And I used that cardstock for the custom baby name on this card as well, which you'll see in a little bit. Okay, so once those leaves are tucked into those corners and stuck down onto the card, I can then stick down that scalloped square with the little seam that's already been started on it, and just stick that straight down onto the card base with some liquid glue. Okay, like I mentioned, I used that Gold Rush cardstock for the baby's name as part of the sentiment, and his name is Calvin, so I cut out his letters using an ABC die set. This is Finley's ABCs by Lawn Fawn. I also cut out each letter twice from white cardstock. And I'm just gluing them all together to create some extra dimension. It's sort of like a way of getting extra dimension without having to use foam. So instead I just glue the two pieces of white together first, and then I'm gluing the piece of Gold Rush on top. And that means that there's 2 layers of white and then the layer of Gold Rush, so 3 layers of cardstock all together that are glued together. And that just creates these really nice sort of 3D shapes out of the letters. It really helps them pop off of the card base, which I think is really nice. So I'm just finishing off here. I've glued all the letters together and I'm finishing with that N, and that will spell out the word Calvin, and that word will go at the bottom of the card just below the square scene. And if you've been watching many of my videos lately or seeing my cards on Instagram, you probably already know that I've really been loving this card design lately, where you have a square scene sort of towards the top of a rectangular card, and that leaves a lot of nice space at the bottom for a sentiment, and I usually like to fill in this with like a big sentiment like this. I actually got this design idea from a fellow card maker who I really admire, and I will put a link to her Instagram down in the description box below. You're probably already familiar with her because she's on the Lawn Fawn design team. Her name is Megan, and she makes some amazing card designs. She has made a lot of card designs using this sort of general card structure, so I was definitely inspired by her cards. So I'm just using little dabs of liquid glue behind each letter to adhere that whole baby name down onto the card one by one, just making sure it's lined up and nice and straight. I actually started by gluing down the first and last letters first so that I knew I had the spacing right, and then I filled in with the letters in between. Okay, I knew I wanted a little tropical vine coming in on the scene in the sky, so I took a piece of that Gold Rush cardstock just to keep everything tied together, and I cut out the base of the vine. And then the die set also comes with these individual leaves. So I cut those out of the Spiffy Speckles paper in green, the same color that I had used for that tropical grass. So everything sort of ties together. I'm using the same papers and the same colors for all the different elements in the card, which I think helps just keep it really nice and consistent. So I glued the green leaves on top of that vine border base so that all of them are green, and then the sort of string of the vine is that Gold Rush. I'm just sort of arranging that where I want it on the scene, and then I can come in and snip off the edges so that you only see the vine across that sky part of the scene. Once I've done that, I can take little dabs of liquid glue and then stick it down straight onto that sky piece. I'm just using my tweezers for this so I can kind of hold on to that vine without getting my fingers in the way, and then just add little dabs of glue behind each of the leaves and then along the little vine until it's covered with glue, and then I can stick it down onto the scene. As you can see, I've already sort of arranged the banner that will be near the top. And then it's really just a matter of adding in a few little elements to the card in terms of the images that I want to include in the scene. Like I kind of already alluded to, I had already pre-stamped, colored, and cut a bunch of these summer-themed images from a Lawn Fawn stamp set that they released in the summer. It's called Toucan Do It. It has that cute little toucan and the leopard, as well as a little lizard. The stamp set comes with a few more images as well. I'd actually stamped, colored, and cut out these images back in the summer, and just kind of kept them aside, whatever I didn't use, and now I'm kind of trying to use them up now that it's winter and just incorporate them into any card design that I can think of. If you've been watching a lot of my videos, you will have already seen that I incorporated these tropical critters into a Christmas card recently, so that video is up in my channel. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out. And now I'm having fun incorporating them into a baby card, so I definitely encourage you to check back in your stash, see what kind of images you have that you didn't get to use on other cards, and even if they're not what you would consider to be seasonal anymore, they might still work, and it's kind of a fun way to stretch your supplies and kind of inspire your own creativity. So I put a couple of the little leafy images and a couple flowers from that stamp set, again that I had kind of stamped and colored already, just sort of arranged them onto the scene with a few of the flowers in the scene and then a few of the leaves on the name. And then finally I can add a few little dabs of liquid glue behind the letters on that banner, being careful not to put too much glue on because that vellum is see-through, so you'll see the glue through it unless it's hidden by the letters. So whenever you're using vellum, do try to keep your adhesive hidden. Once that's stuck down onto the card is complete. So this is the finished card. I really love sort of that stripy background and how interesting it is, and then all of these cute little critters on the scene. I think it's perfect for a baby, and of course, like I mentioned, I do love personalizing baby cards. I think it adds just such a special touch. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please feel free to check out the other videos on my channel or head over to my Instagram account where I share even more cards, and that's all linked down in the description below the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!